Good morning, boys and girls. Welcome to language lesson 151. We are going to begin with our oral language learning exercises. Remember from our last Google Meet, we went over the verbs swim, begin, and prove. So we're going to hear them used in the proper context based on the subject, along with its past participle. Have you swum at this pool often? Bill swam on the school team. He has swum on the team for 3 years. Todd has begun work on his new boat. He began work yesterday. Excuse me. We have begun to make progress. The man was finally proved innocent. He proved that he could make the team. How was that proved? Who swam farther than Jim? Okay, very good. So it's excellent that you're hearing in your ear that the words or the verbs, as I said, that we mentioned earlier are being used properly. All right, and go ahead and just practice that throughout the day, even with your parents and siblings. It will be a great thing. All right, so now we've been going over our parts of speech, and you are more than familiar with that. We know that you're doing excellent in respect to it. We are now going to be moving into what we would call subject-verb agreement. All right, so how many of you have ever played the matching game before, where you had to turn something over? It could be a set of cards, for instance, and the pictures had to correlate with one another. All right, sometimes you were so excited when you found the right set, and there are other times when you were a little frustrated because you just could not get it right. Well, in English, it's important to get it right. How many of you have ever played Uno before? All right. Now, would it make sense if the last player played, for instance, blue skip, and the next player played a yellow reverse on top of a blue skip? No, it wouldn't make any sense, because it doesn't match. And we know that if you, for instance, played that yellow reverse, obviously the next player could add another yellow reverse, and you would say, that makes sense. Well, it's the same thing in our speech. We want it to make sense, and subject and verbs need to agree. So let's go back to that picture matching game. Let's say, for instance, you turned these two cards over. You would think to yourself, no, that definitely does not match. So that wouldn't make any sense. But if you happened to turn the next couple of cards over, you would say, absolutely, those two match. Well, we're going to be discussing subjects and verbs matching when used in a sentence, making sure they agree. All right, so singular subjects take a singular verb. It's very important for you to make note of that. And we are going to go over a number of examples today so that it'll make sense for you. Now, singular verbs, unlike what you learned in nouns, okay? When you went over nouns, you learned that to pluralize a noun, you would normally add either an ES or an S. Well, for a singular verb, they usually end with an S. Isn't that amazing? Like, the English language is so fascinating. So remember that. Singular verbs usually end in an S. Now, here are some examples of helping verbs that are singular. We have am, is, was, has, and does. Now, most of them you'll notice end with an S, but there's always an exception to the rule. So just remember this exception as we move forward. These are examples of plural helping verbs. So we have are, were, have, and do. Again, that's are, were, have, and do. Now a plural subject takes on a plural verb. The pronoun you always takes on a plural verb. So again, we're going to go over examples of these, but this is just for you to be mindful of the rules behind the examples that we're going to be doing. This is an example of the pronoun you taking on a plural verb. So we have Noah, you are late. So although the person was acknowledged by his actual name, because the pronoun you was used, you needed a plural verb coupled with it. And again, boys, you are late. Because the pronoun you was used, it always takes on a plural verb. So just remember that. So how do you choose the correct verb when it comes to a sentence? So first and foremost, unlike what you have done in the past where you located your verb first, this time what you would do is locate your subject first. Then, once you have located your subject, you are going to decide whether or not the subject that you chose was either singular or plural. Very important because, again, you need to have that subject-verb agreement. So you are going to then choose the matching verb based on whether or not, again, the subject was either singular or plural. So here we have an example. I want you to find the subject in this sentence. I'm going to read it with the options that are given. It says, Seth is or are the fastest runner on the track team. The subject in this sentence would be Seth. Now you should realize, well, that's one person. So you need to have subject-verb agreement. So here we go. We have Seth identified as the subject. So now we need to make sure, is it singular or plural? As I just said, it's one person. So in this case, it's singular. That means you would need to identify a singular verb that correlates with that subject. Okay, so we're going to choose the matching verb now. Which one would make sense? Is or are in this case? Would it make sense to say Seth are the fastest runner? You're thinking to yourself, oh no! All right, if you said is, you are correct. It's Seth is the fastest runner on the track team. Okay, so now we are going to find the subject in this sentence. It says, the choir members sings or sing well. All right? Now, in this case, the subject happens to be members. Okay? Now that you have identified the subject, you need to ask yourself, remember, is it singular or is it plural? All right? A dead giveaway right there is the fact that it ends with an S. So in this case, you should have identified the fact that members is plural. So now you will need a plural verb to go along with this subject. So would it be sings or would it be sing? It would be sing. All right? So the choir members sing well. You wouldn't say the choir members sings well. We are going to look at some more examples together. So I'd like for you to direct your attention now to page 231. I'm going to go over the look closely section with you, and then we're going to do the exercises that follow, and you will be left on your own to complete them independently. So on page 231, I'd like for you to look at the look closely section. And basically, you're going to notice that it says an S ending is often a sign of a singular verb and a sign of a plural subject. And there are examples that follow. It says runs, for instance, is a singular verb, and dogs is a plural noun. Remember what we mentioned previously. So the verbs am, is, was, has, and does are all singular. And the verbs are, were, have, and do are all plural. So when a sentence contains a verb phrase, for instance, it is the helping verb that must agree with that subject. In this case, the example that they gave, it says the farmer is harvesting his crops, and the cows are grazing in the pasture. All right, very good. Now we will be able to apply those rules that we just learned. So go ahead and turn to page 232, please. So for Think A on page 232, it says you're going to write singular in the blank if the following subjects are singular. And if they are plural, you're going to write PL. All right? So number 1, it said students recite. Students recite. Again, you will notice that students ends with an S. Okay? In this case, it is plural. And you're going to be doing something special in the next exercise. So pay very close attention to the answers in this one. Number 2, it says she says. Is that singular or is it plural? If you said singular, you're correct. So you would just write S-I-N-G and put a period there to identify it as singular. Right? You're going to go through the exercise, and as I said, Think B actually relates to Think A. You're going to see that now. So go ahead and direct your attention there. It says on notebook paper, you're going to make the singular subjects and verbs in Think A plural. And you're going to make the plural ones singular. So you're basically just going to switch. So let's say, for instance, the ones that we did earlier. So for number 1 in Think A, we said it was plural. So now we need to make it singular. So students recite would become student recites. Let's look at the second one together. Instead of saying she says, which was singular, we now need to make that plural. So we would change that singular pronoun to a plural one. So she would become they, and then we would change says to say. So instead of, again, she says, it would be they say. All right? You are going to go through that for Think A and B, and then you're going to continue with C. It's simply asking you to write yes in the blank if the subjects and verbs agree, and no if they do not agree. So let's do a couple of examples together. Number 1 says, pirates robs. Is that sensible? No. So you write the word no on the blank provided. Number 2 says, he don't. All right, that also doesn't make any sense. All right, and you're going to be able to make those corrections in the next Think section. So go ahead and look at Think D. You're going to need a separate sheet of notebook paper for this, and you're going to rewrite those subjects that were not correct along with their verbs from Think C. You're going to correct them on your notebook paper. So it says change the verbs so that they will agree with the subjects. So again, the first 2 that we mentioned in Think C did not agree. So how would we get them to agree? How could we change pirates robs to make it agree? We would simply say pirates rob, and that's what you would write on your paper. All right, let's look at number 2. He don't would become he doesn't. All right, and as I said, this is a new concept. So we will be going over this in the future, and you will eventually get such a grasp on it that the English language will be effortless for you. All right, go ahead and finish those exercises independently and have yourself a great day.